Barbados Transport Board is going cashless come 2023, and on this episode of In the Know, I engaged Chief Operations Officer Lynda on this new project, the rollout, the costs, and of course, what it will mean for commuters. I'm Krystal Hoyte, and this is In the Know. Ms. Holder, thanks for making the time.
You're very welcome.
The general discussion around the transport board going cashless has been one we've had for years. And at some level, we've implemented it with the student passes, tokens. But now, this project, some may say, is at an international level.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, you're quite correct. Krystal, some time ago, we would have been looking at, as you said, student passes from way back in the day. We would have done the tokens. Even more recently, in the last few years, we introduced the travel card. So you'd have had different variations of a cashless system throughout the years. This time, we believe we have gotten to a point where we want to do something that is easily recognizable throughout the global system. It will not be something uniquely special for the Caribbean. It's not cultural. It's nothing of those things. It is an internationally recognized automatic fare collection system. However, the good thing about it is that the company we're using is a locally owned company. So we're using technology that we have right here in Barbados. The card, when you think of a travel card that is recognizable, most people go automatically to the Metro card. It is very similar in the way it is applied, where you will board a bus and you'll take your card and you'll just tap and it deducts the fare and you continue to travel. So yes, we have brought it to the level of an internationally acceptable process, and persons who travel back and forth around the world will immediately be able to understand what we're trying to do with the system.
You mentioned process. Tell us about the process. How did we get here?
Well, for years, we have been trying to come up with something that is adaptable, that deals with security. It also gives us back office accountability. It allows us to monitor and measure what we are doing at the board. We've been able to do that in various stages with different things, but we've now come together with this card that will do everything for us. The company we're using, as I said before, is a local company called TransPay. We did a complete bidding, had a entire process where we tendered, and we had a number of persons who would have come on board and tendered for the actual project. Once that was done, we selected the best one based on all the things we wanted to be able to do. So among the things we want to be able to do is not just have a GPS system on board the bus, because that's easily bought as a one-off. And the electric buses came with that on it. But we want a GPS system that not only tells us where the buses are, it tells us how long that bus is going to be there. Is that on the route we assigned it to be on, or has that person had to divert for any reason? We want to be able to say to the traveling public, look at your phone, website, whatever you're using, and you should be able to gauge when is that bus coming. So among the complaints we get a lot would be that person says, I was at the bus waiting. And we want to be able to, if not totally eliminate that, to minimize that. So you will then be able to look at an app, which is already being developed, and you'll be able to say, oh, so the next bus is left the terminal already and is expected to be here along this time. Factoring in that we have very little control over the traffic because there are no dedicated bus lanes. But we have estimated based on our historical knowledge how long it takes to get from point A to point B, and that is the guide we'll be using. With the process, apart from the tendering process, which is to deal with the accountability and the transparency to make sure everybody is aware we did it openly, we also then in-house looked at our manual processes, what areas we had some challenges with. One of those areas would have been accounting for student travel, accounting for old age pensioners. So we wanted to make sure those were able to stand up totally to scrutiny. So once we put those systems in place, we then decided this is the one we wanted to use.
Already, we're hearing that the card is being linked to Barbados' new Trident ID. Is that so?
That is correct. We've been in discussions with MIS, which is the ministry that's in charge of the Trident ID, for an extended period to make sure that we took out any possible bugs. So right now, an old age pensioner is able to travel on board the buses just by presenting the ID. And we want to make sure that that facility was not lost. So with the new trainer ID, they will be able to do the same thing. And you will also be able to take that ID. As you've probably heard, it will have an e-wallet component on it. So at some point in time, you'll be able to tap your ID card and go as well too.
Let's talk timeline here. When will Barbadians be able to utilize this service?
But once we finish the testing process of it, and we've started that recently, we are anticipating that the full rollout will be early next year. So Barbadians should be able then to go to designated areas, get their cars, be able to top them up, because you will be able to do that. They'll have facilities around the island that you'll be able to take your card and top it up, and then you'll be able to travel on board the bus. The main thing behind this is that we would have eliminated issues of cash on board the bus initially. And before you even ask, yes, we will have to run a dual system initially because everyone will not immediately have a card. So you still have to have the facility for those persons who don't immediately have a card to be able to use cash, but it will not be a continuous dual system. The idea is to remove cash off the buses. It helps us with security on board the buses, security for our staff and for commuters. It helps us with, as I said before, our back office accountability, that we can track exactly what we are collecting on a daily basis and where we're collecting it. It allows us to be able to plan our route network better, to improve on what we're doing. Presently, we know that there are high levels of persons traveling in different areas, but I cannot sit here and say to you comfortably that the big catchments are at different points. I know that there'll be catchments at the Globe for certain routes. I know there'll be catchments in Warrens for certain routes, but I can't say that for every route. So this would allow me to also monitor where persons are boarding buses and where they're disembarking the bus as well, because we'll be able to track everything.
How many buses will have the card reader in the initial phases?
Initially, 40 buses will have the card readers. We already have 20 that have on the readers and are ready to roll. The part that is missing is the tablet. So the tablet is what will connect then the driver, the system, and everything to the back office. So that should be ready shortly as well for some of them. So we have a couple on the road that you would have seen us testing, but there are about 20 that will be ready shortly.
Speaking of testing, what has been the feedback and what challenges have you experienced?
So far, the feedback has been very positive. Again, Barbadians travel a lot, so they're able to immediately recognize what we're seeking to achieve. The challenge so far, like everything else, is that we have to set up on each bus. Buses are on the road constantly, so I'm pulling buses out of the system to be able to do the setup. Then we're setting up our back office. We're doing training. There's a lot of little pieces happening simultaneously. And for this to be working as effectively and efficiently as we anticipate it doing, we still have to train all of our staff, train up our staff in what to expect, not just the drivers on board the buses, the commuters who will be tasked with answering certain questions, but commuters must be able to reach out to us as well and be able to engage us on what their responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are. So those type of things are still being put together.
Obviously, Barbadians have seen the transition from fossil fuel to electric bus, but it has been much more than that.
It has been so much more than that, Krystal. What we did was not just a transfer of the fuel, because we changed from a fossil fuel powered bus to an electric powered bus. But with that, we heard the complaints and the concerns that were being raised by our commuters. So we also included air conditioning because we were being told how hot the buses were. Then we've moved into a more technologically driven type of area. So we have added in things like the ability to access your social media platforms because we've given you Wi-Fi on board the buses. And then you can sit on the buses and you can work because we've given you charging ports on board the buses. Then you would have heard from some commuters that the older buses were very high and they were having challenges navigating the buses when they step on and step off. These new buses come with kneeling technology to be able to address that complaint as well. Then we had some persons who said, I don't hear the bus bell when it rings, and sometimes the bus driver doesn't hear the bus bell. We put on different alerts for different categories of persons traveling. And then you'll get a message flashing across the inside screen because all the buses come with not just display screens externally, there are 3 display screens externally, but there are also screens internally that you can see your stop that's coming. You can see that the driver has pressed the bell. We've also started to now plot every single stop. So the bus will be able, when you press, you'll be able to see the next stop coming up is this area. So we're doing things of that nature on the buses to make that commuter experience much more enjoyable and to also give them, again, a more international feel. Because we don't only cater to the local community, but there's a growing number of visitors who are taking public transport and having to learn to navigate the island. And these things will also help them. And then you have that community of school children, which is a very vulnerable community to us, and it's a very important community. When you have a school child who has now transitioned from primary to secondary school, the bus system is a whole new thing for them. So when they're now boarding the bus for the first time, they want to be able to see and gauge where that bus is taking them. So these type of facilities allow them then to be able to see that the next stop coming up is wherever. Especially if you're living in Christchurch and going to school somewhere the other side of the island, as happens. So we have all those type of features built into these buses, and we'll continue to roll out similar type features on the other buses. In addition to the customer experience, you will also have the persons who are road users who should be able to benefit from what we're doing as well. Because presently someone boards the bus and they drop in their 350 and it's a slow moving process as the driver has to issue a ticket and things of that nature. With this card, we're eliminating half of those steps. So you board the bus, you tap and go, tap and go. So it means that stopping at a bus stop should be reduced. And that means that the traffic should also not be backed up as long because we really don't have dedicated bus lanes. So when a bus stops, it is usually stopping in traffic. So that will help that process as well.
Of course, Barbadians will ask about the numbers. How much will this project cost?
It is not as high as some people would like to think, but it's also not going to be a cheap project. As you said, we're looking to put this on all of our buses, and we're also going to be rolling this out into TAP. So for those persons who might not know what I'm speaking about when I say TAP, I'm talking about the Transport Augmentation Program, where some private sector vehicles joined us. So we are going to be placing it on our buses and theirs as well. It is going to be over $1 million in project, but the final figures, we'll come back to you and share those with you.
Is it fair to say that this project could improve the efficiency of the transport board?
Yes. Categorically, yes. And the reason why I say that so positively, as I told you earlier, there's some areas that we were still trying to make sure we had all of our information to be able to plan better. One that comes to mind immediately is our routing. Right now, we work with town and country planning. The name has just changed, but that department that says we're setting up a development in this area. And we go to the area with them and we say, okay, let's talk to the transport authority who places the bus stops, and we plan a route to get those persons into town. But sometimes that might not be what is needed. And this system is going to allow me now to be able to track more of that type of travel. So our route network will improve tremendously. We've already started doing a number of cross-country routes to stop persons from having to come into Bridgetown if that's not what they want to do. And more of that will be able to come out once we're able to see exactly where we are picking up passengers. So if you have a grouping that picks up from the globe, is it because they don't wish to go into the bus terminal, or is it because they're looking for the cross-country bus that is going to pass that area and take them to another point? So those type of things, we'll be able to see our ridership numbers more clearly. Right now, we use our ridership numbers, data coming from our tickets, what tickets have been issued and so on. But we cannot sit down in our offices and say the tickets were issued at this point. This new system is going to tell me without me having to do all that, because it's set up to also give me reports. It'll be able to tell me where we're picking up persons from. It'll be able to tell me at 10 o'clock in the morning, you're carrying a heavy load on this bus, so you might need to improve the number of buses or the size of bus, as opposed to at midday where you're not carrying such a heavy load. Right now, we use a lot of anecdotal information. Yes, we have some statistical data, but outside of the statistical data, we still have to be able to do other things. So that comes through with this new system as well.
So cashless and more efficient. Exciting times at the transport board. Thank you so much for making the time, Ms. Holder.
You're very welcome.